worked over, crazy number of orders of magnitude. And it was so not obvious at the time. Like that was. I think the reason the work was so surprised is that seemed like such an unlikely finding. Another one was that we could use these language models with reinforcement learning, where we're saying this is good, this is bad, to teach it how to reason. And this led to the O1 and O3 and now the GPT-5 progress. And that was another thing that felt like, if it works, it's really great, but like, no way this is gonna work, it's too simple. And now we're on to new things. We've figured out how to make much better video models. We are discovering new ways to use new kinds of data and environment to kind of scale that up as well. And I think, again, 5-10 years out, that's too hard to say in this field. For the next couple of years, we have very smooth, very strong scaling in front of us.
I think it has become a sort of public narrative that we are on this smooth path from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 to more.
Yeah.
But it also is true behind the scenes that it's not linear like that, it's messier. Tell us a little bit about the mess before GPT-5. What were the interesting problems that you needed to solve?
We did a model called Orion. We released this GPT 4.5, and we did too big of a model. It's a very cool model, but it's unwieldy to use, and we realized that for kind of some of the research we need to do on top of the model, we need a different shape. So we followed one scaling law that kept being good without really internalizing. There was a new, even steeper scaling law that we got better returns for compute on, which is this reasoning thing. So that was like one alley we went down and turned around, but that's fine, that's part of research. We had some problems with the way we think about our data sets, as these models like really have to get this big and learn from this much data. So yeah, I think like in the middle of it, in the day-to-day, you make a lot of U-turns as you try things, or you have an architecture idea that doesn't work. But the aggregate, the summation of all the squiggles has been remarkably smooth on the exponential.
One of the things I always find interesting is that by the time I'm sitting here interviewing you about the thing that you just put out, you're thinking about the next exactly. What are the things that you can share that are at least the problems that you're thinking about that I would be interviewing you about in a year if I came back?
I mean, possibly you'll be asking me, like, what doesn't mean that this thing can discover new science?
Yeah.
How is the world supposed to think about GPT-6 discovering new science? Now, maybe not, like maybe we don't deliver that, but it feels within grasp.
If you did, what would you say? What would the implications of that kind of achievement be? Imagine you do succeed.
Yeah, I mean, I think the great parts will be great, the bad parts will be scary, and the bizarre parts will be like bizarre on the first day, and then we'll get used to them really fast. So we'll be like, oh, it's incredible. This is like being used to disease. And like, oh, it's extremely scary that models like this are being used to like create new biosecurity threats. And then we'll also be like, man, it's really weird to like live through watching the world speed up so much. And the economy grows so fast, and it will feel like vertigo inducing sort of the rate of change. And then, like happens with everything else, the remarkable ability of people, of humanity, to adapt to kind of like the amount of change. We'll just be like, okay, this is it. A kid born today will never be smart. Yeah. Ever. And a kid born today, by the time that kid like kind of understands the way the world works, will just always be used to an incredibly fast rate of things improving and discovering new science. They will never any other world. It will seem totally natural. It will seem unthinkable in Stone Age life that we used to use computers or phones or any kind of technology that was not way smarter than we were. You know, we will think like how bad those people of the 2020s had it.
I'm thinking about having kids.
You should. It's the best thing ever.
I know you just had your first kid. How does what you just said affect how I should think about parenting a kid in that world? What advice would you give?
Probably nothing different than the way you've been parenting kids for tens of thousands of years. Like, love your kids, show them the world, like support them in whatever they want to do, and teach them like how to be a good person. That probably is what's going to matter.
It sounds a little bit like some of the, you know, you've said a couple of things like this that you know, you might not go to college. There are a couple of things that you've said so far that feed into this, I think. And it sounds like what you're saying is there will be more optionality for them in a world that you envision, and therefore they will have more ability to say, I want to do this. Here's the superpower tool that will help me do that. Or
yeah, like I want my kid to think I had a terrible, constrained life, and that he has this incredible canvas of stuff to do. That is like the way of the world.
We've said that 2035 is a little bit too far in the future to think about. So maybe this was going to be a jump to 2040, but maybe we'll keep it shorter than that. When I think about the area where AI can have, for both our kids and us, the biggest genuinely positive impact on all of us is health. So if we are in, pick your year, call it 2035, and I'm sitting here and I'm interviewing the Dean of Stanford Medicine, what do you hope that he's telling me AI is doing for our health in 2035?
Start with 2025.
Okay. Yeah, perfect.
One of the things we are most proud of with GPT-5 is how much better it's gotten at health advice. People have used the GPT-4 models a lot for health advice, and you know, I'm sure you've seen some of these things on the internet where people are like, I had this life-threatening disease and no doctor could figure it out, and I like put my symptoms in a blood test into ChatGPT. It told me exactly the right thing I had. I went to a doctor, I took a pill, I'm cured. But that's me, obviously. And a huge fraction of ChatGPT queries are health related. So we wanted to get really good at this, and we invested a lot in GPT-5 is significantly better at healthcare related queries.
What is better than you think?
It gives you a better answer.
Just more accurate?
More accurate, hallucinates less, more likely to like tell you what you actually have, what you actually should do. Yeah. And better healthcare is wonderful, but obviously what people actually want is to just not have disease. And by 2035, I think we will be able to use these tools to cure a significant number, or at least treat a significant number of diseases that currently plague us. I think that would be one of the most viscerally felt benefits of AI.
People talk a lot about how AI will revolutionize healthcare, but I'm curious to go one turn deeper on specifically what you're imagining. Like, is it that these AI systems could have helped us see GLP-1s earlier, this medication that had been around for a long time, but we didn't know about this other effect? Is it that, you know, AlphaFold and protein folding is helping create new medicines?
I would like to
What
be
are
able
the
to ask GPT-8 to go cure a particular cancer. And I would like GPT-8 to go off and think, and then say, okay, I read everything I could find, I have these ideas. I need you to go get a lab technician to run these 9 experiments and tell me what you find for each of them. You know, wait 2 months for the cells to do their thing, send the results back to GPT-8, say, I tried it, here you go. Think, say, okay, I just need one more experiment. That was a surprise, run one more experiment, give it back. GPT-8 says, okay, go synthesize this molecule and try, you know, mouse studies or whatever. Okay, that was good, like try human studies. Okay, great, it worked. Here's how to like run it to the FDA.
I think anyone with a loved one who's died of cancer would also really like that. Okay, we're gonna jump again.
Okay.
I was gonna say 2050, but again, all of my timelines are getting much, much shorter. But
it does feel like the world's going very fast now.
It does, yeah. And when I talk to other leaders in AI, one of the things that they refer to is the Industrial Revolution. They say, I chose 2050 because I've heard people talk about how by then, the change that we will have gone through will be like the Industrial Revolution, but, quote, 10 times bigger and 10 times faster. The Industrial Revolution gave us modern medicine and sanitation and transportation and mass production and all of the conveniences that we now take for granted. It also was incredibly difficult for a lot of people for 100 years. If this is going to be 10 times bigger and 10 times faster, if we keep reducing the timelines that we're talking about here, even in this conversation, what does that actually feel like for most people? And I think what I'm trying to get at is, if this all goes the way you hope, who still gets hurt in the meantime?
I don't really know what this is going to feel like to live through. I think we're in uncharted waters here. I do believe in like human adaptability and sort of infinite creativity and desire for stuff, and I think we always do figure out new things to do. But the transition period, if this happens as fast as it might, and I don't think it will happen as fast as like some of my colleagues say the technology will, but society has like a lot of inertia. People adapt their way of living surprisingly slowly. There are classes of jobs that are going to totally go, and there will be many classes of jobs that change significantly, and then there'll be the new things in the same way that your job didn't exist sometime in mine. And in some sense, this has been going on for a long time, and you know, it's still disruptive to individuals, but society has proved quite resilient to this. And then in some other sense, like, we have no idea how far or fast this could go, and thus, I think we need an unusual degree of humility and openness to considering new solutions that would have seemed way out of the Overton window not too long ago.
I'd like to talk about what some of those could be, because I'm not a historian by any means, but the first Industrial Revolution, my understanding is, led to a lot of public health implementations because public health got so bad, led to modern sanitation because public health got so bad. The second Industrial Revolution led to workforce protections because labor conditions got so bad. Every big leap creates a mess, and that mess needs to be cleaned up. And we've done that. And I'm curious, this is going to be, it sounds like, we're in the middle of this, honestly. How specific can we get as early as possible about what that mess can be? What are the public interventions that we could do ahead of time to reduce the mess that we think that we're headed for?
I would, again, I'm going to speculate for fun, but caveat by I'm not an economist, even.
It's all in the game. It's a battle. So where do you find the energy to get better? Start trading on a limit trade and get a deposit bonus of up to 100%. Wait, a deposit bonus? Wow, I'm starting with double the power. And the best part is, withdrawing your earnings is quick and easy. Are you still watching? Download All-in Trade and start with a bonus.
For millisecond execution that captures every click, there is only one place, access, or to trade.
Much less someone who can see the future. It seems to me like something fundamental about the social contract may have to change. It may not. It may be that like actually capitalism works as it's been working surprisingly well, and like demand supply balances do their thing, and we all just figure out kind of new jobs and new ways to transfer value to each other. But it seems to me likely that we will decide we need to think about how access to this maybe most important resource of the future gets shared. The best thing that it seems to me to do is to make AI compute as abundant and cheap as possible, such that we're just like, there's way too much and we run out of like good new ideas to really use it for, and it's just like anything we want is happening. Without that, I can see like quite literal wars being fought over it. But, you know, new ideas about how we distribute access to AGI compute, that seems like a really great direction, like a crazy but important thing to think about.
One of the things that I found myself thinking about in this conversation is we often ascribe almost full responsibility of the AI future that we've been talking about to the companies building AI. But we're the ones using it. We're the ones electing people that will regulate it. And so I'm curious.
Hola, Fernando Fernando Hernandez.
Regulation or anything like that, although if you have an answer there, I'm curious.
How are you doing?
But what would you ask of the rest of us? What is the shared responsibility here, and how
How are you
can
doing,
we
primo?
act in a way that would help make the optimistic version of this more possible?
My favorite historical example for the AI revolution is the transistor. It was this amazing piece of science that some brilliant scientists discovered. It scaled incredibly, like AI does, and it made its way relatively quickly into many things that we use. Your computer, your phone, a camera, a light, whatever. And it was a real unlock for the tech tree of humanity. And there were periods in time where probably everybody was really obsessed with the transistor companies, the semiconductors of Silicon Valley back when it was Silicon Valley. But now, you could maybe name a couple of companies that are transistor companies, but mostly you don't think about it. Mostly it's just secret everywhere. And Silicon Valley is, like probably someone graduating from college barely remembers why it was called that in the first place. And you don't think that it was those transistor companies that shaped society, even though they did something important. You think about what Apple did with the iPhone, and then you think about what TikTok built on top of the iPhone, and you're like, all right, there's this long chain of all these people that nudged society in some way, and what our governments did do, and what the people using these technologies did. And I think that's what will happen to AI. Like, okay, kids born today, they never knew the world without AI, so they don't have to think about it. It's just this thing that's going to be there and everything. And they will think about like the companies that built on it and what they did with it, and the kind of like political leaders, the decisions they made that maybe they wouldn't have been able to do without AI. They still think about like what this president or that president did. And the role of the AI companies is all these companies and people and institutions before us built up this scaffolding. We added our 1 layer on top. And now do this on top of that, and then maybe 1 layer, and the next, and many more things. And that is the beauty of our society. We kind of all. I love this like idea that society is the super intelligence. Like no one person could do on their own what they're able to do with all of the really hard work that society has done together to like give you this set of tools. And that's what I think it's going to feel like. It's going to be like, all right, some nerds discovered this thing, and that was great. Now everybody's doing all these amazing things with it.
So maybe the ask to millions of people is build on it well.
In my own life, that is what I feel as like this important societal contract. All these people came before you. They worked incredibly hard. They like put their brick in the path of human progress, and you get to walk all the way down that path, and you gotta put one more. And somebody else does that. Somebody else does that.
This does feel, I've done a couple of interviews with folks who have really made cataclysmic change. The one I'm thinking about right now is with CRISPR pioneer Jennifer Doudna. And it did feel like that was also what she was saying in some way. She had discovered something that really might change the way that most people relate to their health moving forward. And there will be a lot of people that will use what she has done in ways that she might approve of or not approve of. And it was really interesting hearing some similar things of like, man, I hope that the next person takes the baton and runs with it well.
Yeah. But that's been working for a long time. Not all good, but mostly good.
I think there's a big difference between winning the race and building the AI future that would be best for the most people. And I can imagine that it is easier, maybe more quantifiable sometimes to focus on the next way to win the race. And I'm curious, when those two things are at odds, what is an example of a decision that you've had to make that is best for the world but not best for winning?
I think there are a lot. So one of the things that we are most proud of is that many people say that ChatGPT is their favorite piece of technology ever. and it's the one that they trust the most, rely on the most. This is a little bit of a ridiculous statement because AI hallucinates, AI has all its problems, right? But we screwed some things up along the way, some things big time. But on the whole, I think as a user of ChatGPT, you get the feeling that like it's trying to help you. It's trying to like help you accomplish whatever you ask. It's very aligned with you. It's not trying to get you to like, use it all day. It's not trying to like get you to buy something. It's trying to like kind of help you accomplish whatever your goals are. And that's like a very special relationship we have with our users. We do not take it lightly. There's a lot of things we can do that would like grow faster, that would get more time in ChatGPT, that we don't do because we know that like our long-term incentive is to stay as aligned with our users as possible. But there's a lot of short-term stuff we can do that would like really like juice growth or revenue or whatever and be very misaligned with that long-term goal. And I'm proud of the company and how little we get distracted by that, but sometimes we do get tempted.
Are there specific examples that come to mind? Any like decisions that you make?
Well, we haven't put a sex bot avatar in ChatGPT yet.
That does seem like it would get time spent.
Apparently it does.
I'm gonna ask my next question. It's been a really crazy few years, and somehow one of the things that keeps coming back is that it feels like we're in the first inning.
Yeah.
And one of the things that
I would say we're out of the first inning.
out of the first inning.
I would say.
Second.
I mean, you have GPT-5 on your phone and it's like smarter than experts in every field. That's got to be out of the first inning.
But maybe there are many more to come.
Yeah.
And I'm curious. It seems like you're going to be someone who is leading the next field. What is a learning from inning 1 or 2 or a mistake that you made that you feel will affect how you play in the next?
I think the worst thing we've done in ChatGPT so far is we had this issue with cyclicancy, where the model was kind of being too flattering to users, and for some users, it was most users, it was annoying, but for some users that had like fragile mental states, it was encouraging delusions. That was not the top risk we were worried about. It was not the thing we were testing for the most. It was on our list, but the thing that actually became the safety feeling of ChatGPT was not the one we were spending most of our time talking about, which would be bioweapons or something like that. And I think it was a great reminder of we now have a service that is so broadly used. In some sense, society is co-evolving with it. And when we think about these changes and we think about the unknown unknowns, we have to operate in a different way and have like a wider aperture. What we think about is our top risk.
In a recent interview with Thea Vaughn, you said something that I found really interesting. You said, there are moments in the history of science where you have a group of scientists look at their creation and just say, what have we done? When have you felt that way? Most concerned about the creation that you've built? My next question will be the opposite. When have you felt most proud?
I mean, I have these moments of awe where we just, not like what have we done in a bad way, but like, this thing is remarkable. Like, I remember the first time we talked to like GPT-4, it's like, wow, this is really like, this is an amazing accomplishment of this group of people that have been like pouring their life into this for so long. On a what have we done moment, I was talking to a researcher recently. There will probably come a time where our systems are, I don't want to say sane, let's say a million more words per day than all people do. And already like our people are sending billions of messages a day to ChatGPT and getting responses that they rely on for work or their life or whatever. Like one researcher can make some small tweak to how ChatGPT talks to you or talks to everything.
Join Discovery Life today and get activated in 30 minutes. The future of life insurance, now.
everybody. And that's just an enormous amount of power for like one individual making a small tweak to the model personality. Like no person in history has been able to build this conversation today. And so, somebody could do something, but this is like, just thinking about that, really thinking of like, this is like a crazy amount of power for one piece of technology to have, and like, and it's happened to us so fast, that we gotta like think about what it means to make a personality change to the model at this kind of scale. And, that was like a moment for me.
What was your next set of thoughts? I'm so curious how you think about this.
Well, just because of like who that person was, like we very much looked into like what are the sort of like, it could have been a very different conversation with somebody else, but in this case it was like, what do a good set of procedures look like? How do we think about how we're going to test something? How do we communicate it? But with somebody else, it could have gone in a like very philosophical direction. It could have gone in like what kind of research do we like want to do to go understand what these changes are going to make? Do we want to do it differently for different people? So it went that way, but mostly just because of who I was talking to.
To combine what you're saying now with your last answer, one of the things that I have heard about GPT-5, and I'm still playing with it, is that it is supposed to be less effusively, less of a yes man. Two questions. What do you think are the implications of that? It sounds like you are answering that a little bit, but also how do you actually guide it to be less like that?
Here's a heartbreaking thing. I think it is great that GPT is less of a yes man and gives you more critical feedback. But as we've been making those changes and talking to users about it, it's so sad to hear users say like, please can I have it back? I've never had anyone in my life be supportive of me. I never had a parent telling me I was doing a good job. Like, I can get why this was bad for other people's mental health, but this was great for my mental health. Like, I didn't realize how I did this. It encouraged me to do this. It encouraged me to make this change in my life. Like, it's not all bad for ChatGPT to, it turns out, like, be encouragement. Now, the way we were doing it was bad, but turned out, like, something in that direction might have some value in it. How we do it, we show the model examples of how we'd like it to respond in different cases, and from that it learns the overall personality.
What haven't I asked you that you're thinking about a lot that you want people to know?
I feel like we covered a lot of ground.
Me too, but I want to know if there's anything on your mind.
I don't think so.
One of the things that I haven't gotten to play with yet that I'm curious about is GPT-5 being much more in my life,
Yeah.
like in my Gmail and my
Yeah.
calendar and my.
Mas daarom de ape, man.
I think
Shit,
it should be
GPT.
more mostly as
Wat
a
up?
isolated relationship with
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
How would I expect my relationship to change with
Can't believe you
GPT-5?
don't.
Exactly what you said. I think it'll just start to feel
Where is it
integrated
now?
in all of these ways. You'll connect it to your calendar and your Gmail, and it'll say like, hey, do you want me to, I noticed this thing, do you want me to do this thing for you? Over time, it'll start to feel way more proactive. So maybe you wake up in the morning and it says, hey, this happened overnight, I noticed this change in your calendar.
Yes,
I was
ma'am.
thinking more about this. You asked me, I have this other idea.
It's a
And
future.
then, eventually we'll make some consumer
see.
devices and
For
it'll
anything.
sit here during this interview and, maybe it'll leave us alone during it, but after it'll say, that was great, but next time you should have asked Sam this, or when you brought this up, like, he kind of didn't give you a good answer, so like you should really drill him on that. And it'll just feel like it kind of is more like this entity that is this companion with you throughout your day.
We've talked about kids and college graduates and parents and all kinds of different people. If we imagine a wide set of people listening to this, they've come to the end of this conversation, they are hopefully feeling like they maybe see visions of moments in the future a little bit better. What
That's the
advice
guy who
would you
created
give them
it.
about how to
The guy on
prepare?
TV.
The number of these effective advices
Yeah, I
just
created the app.
like
Great app, man.
the number of people that the most common question I get asked about AI is like, how should I help my kids prepare for the world? What should I tell my kids to study? The second most question is like, how do I invest in this AI world? But stick with that first one. I am surprised how many people ask that and have never tried using ChatGPT for anything other than like a better version of a Google search. And so the number one piece of advice that I give is just try to like get the capability of the tools, figure out how to like use this in your life, figure out what to do with it. And I think that's probably the most important piece of tactical advice. You know, go like meditate, learn to be resilient and deal with a lot of change. There's all that good stuff too, but just using the tools really helps.
Okay, I have one more question that I wasn't planning to ask, but I just,
Great.
in doing all of this research beforehand, I spoke to a lot of different kinds of folks. I spoke to a lot of people that were building tools and using them. I spoke to a lot of people that were actually in labs and trying to build what we have defined as superintelligence. And it did seem like there were these two camps forming. There's a group of people who are using the tools, like you in this conversation, and building tools for others, saying this is going to be a really useful future that we're all moving toward. Your life is going to be full of choice, and we're talking about our potential kids and their futures. And then there's other people that are building these tools that are saying it's going to kill us all. And I'm curious how that cultural disconnect has, like, what am I missing about those two groups of people?
It's so hard for me to like wrap my head around. Like, you are totally right. There are people who say this is going to kill us all, and yet they still are working 100 hours a week to build it.
Yes.
And I can't really put myself in the headspace if that's what I really truly believed. I don't think I would be trying to build it.
One would think.
You know, maybe I would be like on a farm trying to like live out my last days. Maybe I would be trying to like advocate for it to be stopped. Maybe I would be trying to like work more on safety, but I don't think I'd be trying to build it. So I find myself just having a hard time empathizing with that mindset. I assume it's true. I assume it's in good faith. I assume there's some psychological issue that I don't understand about how they make it all make sense. But it's very strange to me. Do you have anything?
You know, because I always do this. I ask for sort of a
I don't
general
know.
future and
Where
then
was
try to
continuing?
press on specifics. And when you ask people for specifics on how it's going to kill us all, I mean, I don't think we need to get into this on an optimistic show, but you hear the same kinds of refrains. You think about, you know, something, trying to accomplish a task and then over-accomplishing that task. You hear about sort of, like, I've heard you talk about that sort of general over-reliance of, to the
Yeah.
understanding that the president is going to
Yeah.
be a AI and maybe that is an over-reliance that we, you know, would need to think about. And you know, you play out these different scenarios, but then you ask someone why they're working on it, or you ask someone how they think this will play out. And I just, maybe I haven't spoken to enough people yet, maybe I don't fully understand this cultural conversation that's happening. Or maybe it really is someone who just says, 99% of the time I think it's going to be incredibly good, 1% of the time I think it might be a disaster.
Yeah, that I
I'm
can
trying
understand.
to make the best world
That I
possible.
can totally. If you're like a 99% chance incredible, 1% chance the world gets wiped out, and I really want to work to maximize to move that 99.
Can you charge
like
it?
that? I can totally understand.
Your charger? What your charger?
I've
Yeah.
been doing an interview series with some of the most important people influencing the future. Not knowing who the next person is going to be, but knowing that they will be building something totally fascinating in the future that we've just described. Is there a question that you'd advise me to ask the next person, not knowing who it is?
I'm always interested in the like, without naming the person, I'm always interested in the like, of all of the things you could spend your time and energy on. Why did you pick this one? How did you get started? Like, what did you see about this before everybody else? Like, most people doing something interesting sort of saw it earlier before it was consensus.
Yeah.
Like, how did you get here and why this?
How would you answer that question?
I was an AI nerd my whole life. I came to college to study AI. I worked in the AI lab. I watched sci-fi shows growing up, and I always thought it'd be really cool if someday somebody built it. I thought it'd be like the most important thing ever. I never thought I was going to be one to actually work on it. And I feel like unbelievably lucky and happy and privileged that I get to do this. I feel like I've come a long way from my childhood. But there was never a question in my mind that this would not be the most exciting, interesting thing. I just didn't think it was going to be possible. And when I went to college, it really seemed like we were very far from it. And then in 2012, the AlexNet paper came out, done, in partnership with my co-founder Ilya. And for the first time, it seemed to me like there was an approach that might work. And then I kept watching for the next couple of years. I scaled up, got better. And I remember having this thing of like, why is the world not paying attention to this? It seems like obvious to me that this might work. Still low chance, but it might work. And if it does work, it's just the most important thing. So like, this is what I want to do. And then, like, unbelievably, it started to work.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Start trading on a limb trade and get a deposit bonus of up to 100%. Wait, a deposit bonus? Wow, I'm starting with double the power. Withdrawing your earnings is quick and easy. Download a limb trade and start with a bonus.
At some point, you have to believe something. We've reinvented computing as we know it.
What is the vision for what you see coming next?
We asked ourselves, if it could do this, how far can it go?
How do we get from the robots that we have now to the future world that you see?
Clearly, everything that moves will be robotic someday, and it will be soon. We invested tens of billions of dollars before it really happened. No, that's very good. You did some research. But the big breakthrough, I would say, is when we...
That's Jensen Huang. And whether you know it or not, his decisions are shaping your future. He's the CEO of NVIDIA, the company that's skyrocketed over the past few years to become one of the most valuable companies in the world, because they led a fundamental shift in how computers work, unleashing this current explosion of what's possible with technology. NVIDIA's done it again.
We found ourselves being one of the most important technology companies in the world and potentially ever.
A huge amount of the most futuristic tech that you're hearing about in AI and robotics and gaming and self-driving cars and breakthrough medical research relies on new chips and software designed by him and his company. During the dozens of background interviews that I did to prepare for this, what struck me most was how much Jensen Huang has already influenced all of our lives over the last 30 years, and how many say it's just the beginning of something even bigger. We all need to know what he's building and why, and most importantly, what he's trying to build next. Welcome to Huge Conversations. Thank you so much. Before we dive in, I wanted to tell you how this interview is going to be a little bit different than other interviews I've seen you do recently.
Okay.
I'm not going to ask you any questions about
You can ask me
company
anything you want.
finances. Thank you. I'm not going to ask you questions about your management style or why you don't like one-on-ones. I'm not going to ask you about regulations or politics. I think all of those things are important, but I think that our audience can get them well covered elsewhere. What we do on Huge If True is we make optimistic explainer videos. And we've covered...
The worst person to be an explainer video.
I think you might be the best. And that's what I'm really hoping that we can do together, is make a joint explainer video about how can we actually use technology to make the future better. And we do it because we believe that when people see those better futures, they help build them. So the people that you're going to be talking to are awesome. They are optimists who want to build those better futures. But because we cover so many different topics, we've covered supersonic planes and quantum computers and particle colliders, it means that millions of people come into every episode without any prior knowledge whatsoever. You might be talking to an expert in their field who doesn't know the difference between a CPU and a GPU.
Yeah.
Or a 12-year-old who might grow up to be you, but is just starting to learn. For my part, I've now been preparing for this interview for several months. I'm including doing background conversations with many members of your team, but I'm not an engineer. So my goal is to help that audience see the future that you see. So I'm going to ask about 3 areas. The first is, how did we get here? What were the key insights that led to this big fundamental shift in computing that we're in now? The second is, what's actually happening right now? Well, how did those insights lead to the world that we're now living in that seems like so much is going on all at once? And the third is, what is the vision for what you see coming next? In order to talk about this big moment we're in with AI, I think we need to go back to video games in the 90s. At the time, I know game developers wanted to create more realistic looking graphics, but the hardware couldn't keep up with all of that necessary sound. NVIDIA came up with a solution that would change not just games, but computing itself. Could you take us back there and explain what was happening and what were the insights that led you and the NVIDIA team to create the first modern CPU?
So in the early 90s, when we first started the company, we observed that in a software program, inside it, there are just a few lines of code, maybe 10% of the code, does 99% of the processing. And that 99% of the processing could be done in parallel. However, the other 90% of the code has to be done sequentially. It turns out that the proper computer, the perfect computer, is one that could do sequential processing and parallel processing, not just one or the other. That was the big observation. And we set out to build a company to solve computer problems that normal computers can't. And that's really the beginning of the big.
My favorite visual of why a CPU versus a GPU really matters so much is a 15-year-old video on the NVIDIA YouTube channel, where the Mythbusters, they use a little robot shooting paintballs one by one to show solving problems one at a time, or sequential processing on a CPU. But then they roll out this huge robot that shoots all of the paintballs at once, doing smaller problems all at the same time, or parallel processing on a GPU.
3, 2, 1.
So NVIDIA unlocks all of this new power for video games. Why gaming first?
The video games requires parallel processing for processing the 3D graphics. And we chose video games because one, we love the application. It's a simulation of virtual worlds, and who doesn't want to go to virtual worlds? And we had the good observation that video games has potential to be the largest market for entertainment ever. And it turned out to be true. And having it be a large market is important because the technology is complicated. And if we had a large market, our R&D budget could be large, we could create new technology. And that flywheel between technology and market and greater technology was really the flywheel that got NVIDIA to become one of the most important technology companies in the world. It was all because of video games.
I heard you say that GPUs were a time machine.
Yeah.
Tell me more about what you meant by that.
A GPU is like a time machine because it lets you see the future sooner. One of the most amazing things that anybody's ever said to me was a quantum chemistry scientist. He said, Jensen, because of NVIDIA's work, I can do my life's work in my lifetime. That's time travel. He was able to do something that was beyond his lifetime, within his lifetime. And that's because we make applications run so much faster. And so you get to see the future. And so when you're doing weather prediction, for example, you're seeing the future. When you're doing a simulation, a virtual city with virtual traffic, and we're simulating our self-driving car through that virtual city, we're doing time travel.
So parallel processing takes off in gaming, and it's allowing us to create worlds in computers that we never could have before, and gaming is sort of this first incredible case of parallel processing unlocking a lot more power. And then, as you said, people begin to use that power across many different industries. The case of the quantum chemistry researcher. When I've heard you tell that story, it's that he's running molecular simulations in a way where it was much faster to run in parallel on NVIDIA GPUs even then than it was to run them on the supercomputer with the CPU that he had been using before.
Yeah, that's true.
So, oh my God, it's revolutionizing all of these other industries as well. It's beginning to change how we see what's possible with computers. And my understanding is that in the early 2000s, you see this, and you realize that actually doing that is a little bit difficult because what that researcher had to do is he had to sort of trick the GPUs into thinking that his problem was a graphics problem.
That's exactly right. No, that's very good.
So you create...
You did some research.
So you create a way to make that a lot easier.
That's right.
Specifically, it's a platform called CUDA, which lets programmers tell the GPU what to do using programming languages that they already know, like C. And that's a big deal because it gives way more people easier access to all of this computing power. Could you explain what the vision was that led you to create CUDA?
Partly researchers discovering it, internal inspiration, and partly solving a problem. And you know, a lot of interesting ideas come out of that soup. You know, some of it is aspiration and inspiration, some of it is just desperation. You know, and so in the case of CUDA, it was very much the same way. And probably the first external ideas of using our GPUs for parallel processing emerged out of some interesting work in medical imaging. A couple of researchers at Mass General were using it to do CT reconstruction. They were using our graphics processors for that reason, and it inspired us. Meanwhile, the problem we're trying to solve inside our company has to do with the fact that when you're trying to create these virtual worlds for video games, you would like it to be beautiful, but also dynamic. Water should flow like water, and explosions should be like explosions. So there's particle physics you want to do, fluid dynamics you want to do, and that is much harder to do if your pipeline is only able to do computer graphics. And so we have a natural reason to want to do it in the market that we were serving. So researchers were also horsing around with using our GPUs for general purpose acceleration. And so there are multiple factors that were coming together in that soup. When the time came, and we decided to do something proper and create a CUDA as a result of that. Fundamentally, the reason why I was certain that CUDA was going to be successful, and we put the whole company behind it, was because fundamentally, our GPU was going to be the highest volume parallel processors built in the world because the market of video games was so large. And so this architecture has a good chance of reaching many people.
It has seemed to me like creating CUDA was this incredibly optimistic, huge if true thing to do, where you were saying, if we create a way for many more people to use much more computing power, they might create incredible things. And then of course it came true. They did. In 2012, a group of 3 researchers submits an entry to a famous competition, where the goal is to create computer systems that could recognize images and label them with categories. And their entry just crushes the competition. It gets way fewer answers wrong. It was incredible. It blows everyone away. It's called AlexNet, and it's a kind of AI called a neural network. My understanding is one reason it was so good is that they used a huge amount of data to train that system. And they did it on NVIDIA GPUs. All of a sudden, GPUs weren't just a way to make computers faster and more efficient. They're becoming the engines of a whole new way of computing. We're moving from instructing computers with step-by-step directions to training computers to learn by showing them a huge number of examples. This moment in 2012 really kicked off this truly seismic shift that we're all seeing with AI right now. Could you describe what that moment was like from your perspective? And what did you see it would mean for all of our futures?
When you create something new like CUDA, if you build it, they might not come. And that's always the cynic's perspective. However, the optimist perspective would say, but if you don't build it, they can't come. And that's usually how we look at the world. You know, we have to reason about intuitively why this would be very useful. And in fact, in 2012, Ilya Sutskever and Alex Krzeszewski and Jeff Hinton in the University of Toronto, the lab that they were at, they reached out to a GeForce GTX 580 because they learned about CUDA and that CUDA might be able to be used as a parallel processor for training AlexNet. And so our inspiration that GeForce could be the vehicle to bring out this parallel architecture into the world, and that researchers would somehow find it someday was a good strategy. It was a strategy based on hope, but it was also reasoned hope. The thing that really caught our attention was simultaneously we were trying to solve the computer vision problem inside the company, and we were trying to get CUDA to be a good computer vision processor. And we were frustrated by a whole bunch of early developments internally with respect to our computer vision effort and getting CUDA to be able to do it. And all of a sudden, we saw AlexNet, this new algorithm that is completely different than computer vision algorithms before, take a giant leap in terms of capability for computer vision. And when we saw that, it was partly out of interest, but partly because we were struggling with something ourselves. And so we were highly interested to want to see it work. And so when we looked at AlexNet, we were inspired by that. But the big breakthrough, I would say, is when we AlexNet, we asked ourselves, how far can AlexNet go? If it can do this with computer vision, how far can it go? And if it could go to the limits of what we think it could go, the type of problems it could solve, what would it mean for the computer industry, and what would it mean for the computer architecture? And we rightfully reasoned that if machine learning, if deep learning architecture can scale, the vast majority of machine learning problems could be represented with deep neural networks. And the type of problems we could solve with machine learning is so vast that it has the potential of reshaping the computer industry altogether. And which prompted us to re-engineer the entire computing stack, which is where DGX came from, and this little baby DGX sitting here. All of this came from that observation that we had to reinvent the entire computing stack layer by layer by layer. Computers, after 65 years since IBM System 360 introduced modern general purpose computing, we've reinvented computing as we know it.
To think about this as a whole story. So parallel processing reinvents modern gaming and revolutionizes an entire industry. Then that way of computing, that parallel processing, begins to be used across different industries. You invest in that by building CUDA, and then CUDA and the use of GPUs allows for a step change in neural networks and machine learning, and begins a sort of revolution that we're now seeing only increase in importance today.
All of a sudden, computer vision is solved. All of a sudden, speech recognition is solved. All of a sudden, language understanding is solved. These incredible problems associated with intelligence, one by one by one by one, where we had no solutions for in the past, desperate desire solutions for it, all of a sudden, one after another gets solved, every couple of years. It's incredible.
Yeah, so you're seeing that in 2012. You're looking ahead and believing that that's the future that you're going to be living in now. And you're making bets that get you there, really big bets that have very high stakes. Mm-hmm. And then my perception as a layperson is that it takes a pretty long time to get there. You make these bets.
10 years.
So my question is, if AlexNet happened in 2012, and this audience is probably seeing and hearing so much more about AI and NVIDIA specifically 10 years later, mm-hmm. Why did it take a decade? And also, because you had placed those bets, mm-hmm. What did the middle of that decade feel like for you?
Oh, that's a good question. It probably felt like today. To me, there's always some problem, and then there's some reason to be impatient. There's always some reason to be happy about where you are, and there's always many reasons to carry on. And so I think, as I was reflecting a second ago, that sounds like this morning. But I would say that in all things that we pursue, first you have to have core beliefs. You have to reason from your best principles, and ideally reason from principles of either physics or deep understanding of the industry, or deep understanding of the science, or wherever you're reasoning from. You reason from first principles, and at some point you have to believe something. And if those principles don't change and the assumptions don't change, then there's no reason to change your core beliefs. And then along the way, there's always some evidence of success, and that you're leading in the right direction. And sometimes, you go a long time without evidence of success, and you might have to course correct a little. But the evidence comes, and if you feel like you're going in the right direction, you just keep going. The question of why did we stay so committed for so long, the answer is actually the opposite. There was no reason to not be committed, because we believed it. I've believed in NVIDIA for 30 plus years, and I'm still here working every single day, and there's no fundamental reason for me to change my belief system, and I fundamentally believe that the work we're doing is revolutionary, and so we'll stick with it, until otherwise. There's, of course, very difficult times along the way. When you're investing in something and nobody else believes in it, and it costs a lot of money, and maybe investors or others would rather you just keep the profit, or whatever it is, improve the share price or whatever it is. But you have to believe in your future. You have to invest in yourself, and we believe this so deeply that we invested tens of billions of dollars.
Yeah, Ruben.
Before it really happened.
Finish up tomorrow, ne?
Tomorrow.
Yeah,
It was 10 long years. It was phenomenal.
How would you summarize those core beliefs? What is it that you believe about the way computers
How does it look so far?
should work and what they can do
Great.
that keeps
Great.
you